Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Avivishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us, may he guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Om, peace, peace, peace. And good evening. So I thought we'd first start with a few comments that Swami Atmavidyananda made about Shiva and Shaivism, since a week from this Sunday will be our celebration of Shivaratri. And next Friday we will do the crystal bowl meditation, which will be centered around ideas of Shiva. So he says, as the Vaishnavas regard Krishna and Rama as their ideals, so there are Hindus who look upon other manifestations as their ideal. The Shaivas, for example, worship Shiva, the third person of the Hindu Trinity. Shiva represents the ideal of renunciation and absolute freedom from worldliness. He is revered by the Hindus as the embodiment of contemplativeness and yoga. He is therefore worshipped by the yogis, saints, and sages of all sects. They repeat the name of Shiva with tears of love and devotion streaming from their eyes. They forget everything of the world when they utter his sacred name. Shiva and Vishnu, again, are one and the same in their spiritual essence. They are two manifestations of the one infinite being, who is called Brahman in the Vedas. A Vaishnava can worship Shiva in the same spirit as he worships his own ideal, Vishnu, and a Shaiva can worship Vishnu in the same spirit as he worships his own ideal, Shiva, because they know that he who is Vishnu is Shiva, and he who is Shiva is Vishnu. Shiva represents, as I have already said, contemplativeness, yoga, renunciation, and absolute freedom from worldliness. As Vishnu is adorned by the Vaishnavas with all blessed qualities, with all that is beautiful, all that stands for wealth, prosperity, and success in life, Shiva, on the contrary, is adorned with all that is ugly, horrible, and awe-inspiring. His beatific form is encircled by venomous snakes of evil, misfortune, and worldliness, but they cannot injure him. Shiva dwells in the cremation ground where horrors of death and destruction surround him, but they cannot frighten him or disturb his blissful samadhi. He is the ever undaunted conqueror of all dread, danger, passion, and distress. He is attended by ghosts and wicked spirits, but they cannot hurt him. Shiva renounces the world for the good of humanity. Voluntarily, he takes upon himself the burdens, anxieties, sufferings, and pains of all humanity, and swallows the deadliest poison to bestow immortality upon his earnest followers and true devotees. His consort, the Divine Mother of the universe, is his only companion in austerities and penances. He lives where nobody cares to go, and he accepts the tiger skin and ashes from crematories as his ornaments. He is the ideal of the yogis. If anyone wishes to see and understand what renunciation means, let him go to India and study the worship of Shiva. He has many forms, many incarnations, and there are many symbols connected with his life. The Shaivas worship the snow-white form of Shiva, which symbolizes purity and freedom from all taints of worldliness. The form of him who is the master of the universe. Shiva can be worshipped under all circumstances. If a follower of Shiva cannot find a temple, he may sit under a tree. He does not need any form, statue, or symbol. He simply closes his eyes and meditates upon Shiva as the Lord of the universe. beyond good and evil, beyond all relativity, the embodiment of the infinite and absolute being. The whole truth of the Sankhya philosophy is symbolized in the Shakta worship, or the worship of Divine Mother. You will remember that the Sankhya believes in the evolution of the world and of the whole universe out of one eternal energy, while the individual soul is known as Purusha, the infinite spirit. So Shiva represents Purusha, the formless infinite spirit, and his consort or Shakti is that eternal energy, which is called in Sanskrit Prakriti. The union of the male and female principle of divinity is the beginning of cosmic evolution. Here you will notice how the ultimate conscious conclusions of science have been symbolized by the Hindus and made into objects of devotion and worship. Ask how the evolution of the world began, and they will show you the symbol of Purusha and Prakriti. The religion of the Hindus, in fact, embraces science, logic, and philosophy. They think that which is unscientific, illogical, and philosophical cannot be called religious. So they take the scientific truths, make symbols out of them, and relating them to the eternal being, they use them as the most helpful objects for devotion and worship. The Hindu mind is very inventive along spiritual lines. It gives its inventive genius full play in the spiritual field. There is no other religion in the world which is so rich in mythology, symbolism, rituals, and ceremonies, and which possesses so many phases of the divine ideal as the Sanatana Dharma, or the eternal religion of the Hindus. Its followers are freely allowed to choose their ideals in harmony with their thoughts and spiritual tendencies. They believe that one particular set of doctrines and dogmas cannot satisfy the aspirations of all human souls, as one coat cannot fit all bodies. So one particular ideal cannot fit all minds, cannot suit all the spiritual tendencies of all nations and all countries. Do you not see how Christianity has failed in that respect when it tried to make the whole world adopt one ideal? Do you not see today how, among the followers of Christianity, there is a constant fight and struggle for lack of a better understanding of their religious ideal? Human minds need variety, and the paths which lead to the supreme goal should vary according to the tendency, capacity, and spiritual development of the individual. Therefore, the eternal religion of the Hindus prescribes no set path, but offers various ones to suit different minds. The path of right knowledge and right discrimination, Jnana Yoga, of concentration and meditation, Raja Yoga, of work for work's sake, Karma Yoga, and for the devotion and worship, Bhakti Yoga. Each of these, again, has various branches. Thus we see that the Hindus alone have succeeded in giving to the world a religion which fits all minds and all tendencies under all conditions, a religion which preaches the worship of one God, the infinite being under a variety of names and ideals. Truth is one, but its manifestations are many. This noble and sublime conception has made the Hindus extremely tolerant towards other faiths and other forms of worship outside their own, for they consider that all religions, sects, and creeds are like so many paths which lead to the same goal. And of course, we should also remember that Sri Ramakrishna is as much an incarnation of Shiva as he is of Vishnu. Sometimes the emphasis seems to be on he who is Ram and he who is Krishna was born again as Ramakrishna. But his mother had this experience of, at the Shiva temple, that the Shiva energy entered her body and then she became pregnant. So we have to consider that he is just as much an incarnation of Shiva as he is of Vishnu. Then, of course, as far as the symbology of Shiva, again, as he said, you can simply close your eyes and meditate on the name of Shiva. or you can pick a particular form along with chanting the name. And if you like that idea of the source of the cosmic creation, you can think of the Shiva Lingam and the Yoni, representing the male principle and the female principle joining together in the act of creation. And so that's the most formless form, you could say, the least formed form image that one can meditate on, the simplest form that you can imagine. It's not at all anthropomorphic and so forth. Or you can conceive of the meditating Shiva, as they mentioned, the image of Shiva covered with light-colored ashes, almost white-colored ashes, meditating serenely. And if you then meditate on that figure, you yourself are drawn into a more meditative state. Then there's the Nataraja symbol, which incorporates all the different elements. Whenever any particular sect ends up seeing all the aspects within their aspects. So there's not a need to worship a creative Brahma aspect and a preserving Vishnu aspect and a recycling Shiva aspect. They're all one, and as he mentioned many times, Vishnu and Shiva are really just different manifestations of the same. And so Shaivite, if you look at the form of the Nataraja, it really represents all three of those energies. He's dancing the dance of creation. He's got the Damaru in one hand vibrating, indicating the vibrational nature of the universe. And the whole universe, as instead of the still waters of infinite unmanifest oneness, the drum and the dance both are rhythmic operations, representing that the creation is a vibrational disturbance of that one infinite manifestation. And that's how you get a manifestation out of oneness, is through vibration and motion and energy. And he's got a circle of flames around him, indicating that everything goes around in cycles and eventually goes through a dissolution and then comes back into the creation. But he also has his foot on a little demonic soul so that the demonic forces don't get out of control too soon. And he's, even though, as it mentioned, he's likes cremation grounds, and a lot of sort of unseemly characters like to hang around him because he's so easy to please, and he doesn't get disturbed by their presence. And so these kinds of beings can gather around Lord Shiva without a problem. They're not sent away. He's very receiving of all sorts of souls, but he's not disturbed by them, but he also keeps them under control. And then, of course, you have the story of Ganesha, and Ganesha was put in charge of these. He's called Ganapati. He's in charge of the Ganas. Shiva eventually mythologically puts his son in charge of these kind of crazy characters that hang around him. And so there are many mythological stories, and if you'd like to hear some, you come to Shivaratri, and in between the 4 watches, those 3 intermediate periods, one of the Swamis or Pravajikas will tell some of the Shiva stories, and so that you get a reminder of some of the mythological stories, which represent energies and characteristics of this particular aspect of the divine. He's the easiest deity to please, so his worship is relatively simple compared to some of the others. his consort Kali and Durga are a little more complicated, but Shiva's the simplest. And there's no homa fire on Shivaratri. We only do that on the Titi Puja days. All right, and then for our next selection, I chose a chapter from his commentary on the Gita. This is drawn from sections of chapter 9 of the Bhagavad Gita. He has a long, long commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, going into infinite details. Again, this is designed for an American audience who basically knew nothing. So he's taking them from their religious traditions, which were probably primarily, a lot of them were Christian Scientists or Unitarian, Emerson, Unitarians, Unitarian Universalists. That was many of those people were attracted to him, but also people from other traditions. Of course, Episcopalians were fairly prominent, as well as many other different Christian traditions. But those first two are the ones that were probably the most attracted to him, as well as the spiritualist tradition. There's a pretty strong spiritualist tradition as well. And they felt he had a lot to say to them and a little bit more in common, so there was a little bit more common basis. So when we read this, you understand that he's speaking to people with limited background, although people like Emerson had read the Gita and referred to the Gita, so some of them were already somewhat familiar with the Bhagavad Gita from that aspect. So he titled this particular chapter, "The Atman is the Source of Everything." Vedanta philosophy believes in the incarnation of God, that God manifests himself from time to time in a human form to teach mankind, to show the path to righteousness, and to establish the path to true religion. This idea you will find very strongly enforced in the Bhagavad Gita. The teacher in the Gita is considered in India as one of the great incarnations or avatars. All sects, beginning with monists and dualists, believe in Krishna as one of the incarnations of the divine manifestation. Those who heard my lecture on the worship of Krishna will remember how he lived and how wonderful was his life. He lived about 1400 BC, about the same time, as the Trojan War in Greece, and his teachings are incorporated in the Bhagavad Gita. The monists or non-dualists, who believe only in one existence, still cannot deny this manifestation of the incarnation of God. We will see now how Sri Krishna speaks of himself as the incarnation of the divinity. You will find that whenever Sri Krishna used the pronoun I, me, or mine, he never uses them in the human sense, but in the divine sense. I have said it over and over again that whenever a great spiritual leader or incarnation speaks, he never speaks from the human standpoint or from the standpoint of the individual ego, but he remembers and is conscious of his divine nature. When he speaks of himself, he speaks as part and parcel of the supreme deity. Here in the 11th verse of the 9th chapter, Sri Krishna says, "Those who are deluded do not know my supreme self as the great Lord of all beings and think that I am bound in a human form." So, of course, he also used this idea when talking about the teachings of Christ, that when Christ would use the same pronouns of I, me, and mine, he was referring to his divine self, not his immortal self, not his human incarnation, not the physical body that had manifested as Jesus. And so it goes with all the incarnations. And he goes on to say, I've already mentioned before that Sri Krishna used these words, I, me, and mine, not in the sense of an ordinary mortal, but in the sense of the Supreme Spirit. That Supreme Spirit, the projector of all the phenomenal forms that we see and perceive with our senses, manifests itself in a human form and expresses its power through the human body. When that manifestation comes, a new spiritual influx comes to this world, and according to Vedanta, this divine manifestation is not limited by time, place, or nationality. And as he said, all the different schools, whether Advaitic or Dvaitic or Vishishta Dvaitic, monist, dualists, whatever, they all will refer to the Bhagavad Gita as a source of great teachings. And it's an interesting comparison if you get, say, 3 or 4 different versions of the Gita, one from the standpoint of a Vaishnava dualist who's very narrow-minded, you could say, that Krishna is the only way. You'll get a very different interpretation than you would from, say, one of the Ramakrishna Swamis that has this broader perspective. But then even within the Ramakrishna order, we have people that are very adamant Advaitists. And so they're going to interpret every part of that text from an Advaitic standpoint. And so you can see some various differences in the way they translate various passages in order to suit their particular doctrine. But of course, as Swami Vivekananda pointed out, even with the Vedas, he did this with the Upanishads. He said the Upanishads really support all of these schools, but the interpreters torture the text to make it sound like it only supports their particular school. So we accept Christ as one of these great manifestations, and we also accept Buddha as one of these manifestations. The only difference between Christians and the students of Vedanta is that Christians believe that Christ is the only manifestation, while the others do not. Now, those who do not understand the relationship between the ego and the Supreme Self, and those who do not and cannot differentiate the actions and works of an ordinary mortal from those of a divine incarnation, think that they are like ordinary mortals. But there is a vast difference. Although they live like human beings, still they are not on the human plane. It is very difficult for an ordinary mortal to understand the difference between a human being and a divine manifestation. If the divine manifestation did not come down on our plane, we could not have realized their divinity and could not have struggled hard to rise above the human plane. Sri Krishna says, these deluded ones who disregard the divine manifestations are a vain hope, vain action, alike in discrimination and possessing the delusive nature of a demon or a friend. There's something wrong with this scanning. I think probably in Shankara's commentary it says, let's see, it seems strong and harsh, but those who do not recognize the divinity when such manifestations appear are of vain hopes. Their hopes are not of a higher nature. Their spiritual eyes are not open, and their hopes are of a worldly kind on a material plane. Consequently, they are vain and false when we look at them from the standpoint of those which are eternal and permanent. These actions do not produce the highest results, but they produce results on the lower plane of vain knowledge. The knowledge is not of the Supreme, but of the individual ego, or of ordinary mortals, and that far they can go. Ordinarily, we think that when we have knowledge of ourselves and ordinary mortals, we attain the highest knowledge, but it is not so. The highest knowledge consists in the true self and the relation which we bear to the Supreme Self, the Supreme Spirit. And of course, we're all aware that even with ourselves, sometimes when we meet somebody with great wisdom, it's easy to relate to them. They're kind of speaking our language. And other times they might be speaking in ways that just don't quite reach us. We just don't quite get what they're saying. Or you might read different books by different spiritual teachers, and some of them just seem really clear, and others seem just not so clear. They're kind of convoluted from your standpoint. And so it's just whatever we're ready to receive. And of course, an incarnation has to, as he mentions, has to take on some human aspects in order for us to relate to them at all. Otherwise, how are we going to understand what they're trying to say if they haven't taken on some human attributes? If they came looking like some alien creature with 3 eyes and 4 arms and something, different color skin and so forth, we might be awed by them, but it might be difficult to relate our lives to their lives. So, lacking in the power of discrimination, they do not discriminate the right from the wrong, the eternal from the non-eternal. They think that this body will last forever, and so they try to preserve this body. They do not see the transitory nature of the material form, nor do they understand the ephemeral character of the phenomenal names and forms. What is the character of a demon or of a friend? The character of a demon is described here like those who constantly think of injuring others. A demon says, cut, break, eat, drink, and rob others of their properties and injure them. He has no sense of moral obligation. He does not even obey the moral and spiritual laws that govern our souls, because he does not recognize the existence of souls which will continue to live after death. Nor does he recognize the law of cause and sequence. He is extremely selfish and tries to enrich himself at the expense of others. That is the character of a demon or of a devil. After death, a devil is not elevated, and when he comes down to the human plane, he is born with those dark tendencies and continue to fulfill his desires by selfish motives, and therefore he remains on that plane for some time. It's just occurring to me that this friend doesn't make any sense. It was probably a different word, and the scanner just misspelled it. Maybe a fiend or something. That's probably what it was. This friend doesn't make any sense. So yeah, every once in a while, depending on the font, the scanner can't quite figure out what the word is.
The devil should also come up, not down.
Yeah. But people of this type will not remain in that state forever. Their nature will come out, and after reaping the results of their wicked thoughts and deeds, they will begin to understand the moral and spiritual laws which govern their lives, and gradually they will rise above that plane. There is another class of people who are described as Mahatmas. You have heard that word many a time. The Theosophists have introduced that word and misinterpreted it, and have given a false idea among the people of the Western countries. That is the reason why there was so much fighting and quarreling. The word Maha is the singular, and Atma is the plural. Maha meaning great, and Atma means soul. Therefore, it literally means a great soul. That doesn't make sense either. Atma is the plural. Anyway, I should have brought the original text. Sri Krishna says the great-souled ones partake of the divine qualities. The great-souled ones partaking of the divine qualities worship me with a heart turned to no other object, and knowing me as the unchangeable source of all beings. Not only that, says Sri Krishna, but also being devoted to austerity and love, they sing in praise of me, pay attention to the noble teachings of Vedanta, worship me, bow down to me, and pray to me with one-pointed hearts. So again, the Mahatma just means a great soul, and they partake of these great qualities. There's another class of devotees who possess divine qualities. They have self-control, which means control of mind and senses. Those who possess self-control possess divine qualities. Those who have faith in the eternal and unchangeable truth possess divine qualities. And a few weeks ago, we had a whole lecture on self-control. And so he's bringing that idea here again, that self-control brings divine qualities out. Basically, they have a chance to manifest. If there's not self-control, then the divine qualities remain hidden. Those who are charitable and kind towards others, possessing as they do divine qualities, worship the eternal truth with one-pointed hearts. And of course, as Vivekananda would say, they're worshiping the God within the people that they're serving. Although they live in the world with wife, children, and family, still their mind does not deviate from the path of truth. Rather, their mind is directed toward God, and whatever they do without forgetting the ideal, the eternal truth. They always remember that every other thing of the world is secondary. The highest aim of life they consider to be the realization of eternal truth, which does not change and is the eternal source of all beings. Ordinary people do not realize the eternal source of all beings, but it should be remembered that the aim of our existence is to know that eternal source. We cannot be satisfied otherwise. We may devote the whole of our energy to the pursuit of objects of a transitory nature, but at the bottom of our soul we find extreme longing for what does not change with phenomenal forms, and so we struggle to know that. Why is that tendency? Because our nature is also eternal. In trying to know eternal truth, we know ourselves, and our true nature is revealed. We want to know ourselves as eternal, and there is that something which is eternal and unchangeable and will be easily known. When we say we do not know the eternal, we mean we do not know our eternal nature. Vedanta does not mystify anything, but it solves the mystery and makes it simple. And of course, when you look at it, all religions are trying to do that same thing when properly practiced. They're always all trying to help us remember God all the time, as he put it over here. Got to find it again. See, they always remember that every other thing of the world is secondary, and their mind is directed toward God, and whatever they do without forgetting the ideal, the eternal truth. And so that's really what different religions are trying to practice in quite different ways, but that's kind of the essence of it. For example, if you're a Christian and you really take on that attitude that Christ died for you, then it will be, if you really accept that, then you are going to be remembering Christ all the time, because he saved you, you see. Just if a friend saved you from a fatal accident, you would always remember them. In the Jewish tradition, of course, you have a covenant with God, and so you follow these various rules because you have this covenant. So every time you follow a rule, you're following the covenant because God gave it to you. And so you have that constant remembrance. And of course, in the Islamic tradition, your mind is always focused on the next prayer session. You've got 5 times a day to pray. You've got to organize your entire day around those 5 times, and you have to schedule everything so that you can fit those 5 times into your schedule. So your mind is constantly thinking about that. So these are various ways that other traditions guide the mind towards remembering God all the time. If eternal truth be infinite, we are not excluded from that infinite substance. That infinite substance dwells in us, and we cannot be separated from it. Therefore, if we can know that infinite substance dwelling in us, then where we live and move and have our being, the soul is satisfied. It does not wish to know anything else. Nothing beyond that is considered to be worthwhile. If the things of the world go to pieces, the soul is not sorry for it, because it has known its own eternal nature. And those who possess divine qualities worship that eternal truth, have faith in that eternal truth, and ultimately realize it through that faith. What else do they possess? What else do they who possess divine qualities? They also glorify the eternal truth. They do not glorify anything that is transitory and not worth glorifying, but which is eternal. They glorify and manifest the glory of their divine nature. They take vows that they must know the truth and must not deviate from the path of truth and righteousness. They are steadfast in those vows, just as Buddha took vows, and after going through his struggle for 6 years, sat down under the bo tree with his determination and saying, "Let the bones and flesh of my body go to pieces. Let the bones be reduced to dust. But without attaining that eternal truth, I shall not move an inch from this spot." With that determination, he sat there, and within 3 days he accomplished what he wished. And then he became Buddha, the enlightened one. So let us be steadfast in our vows, even in our ordinary life. If we take the vow of not telling a lie, let it be steadfast. Let us take the vow of leading a strictly moral life and make that vow here and now. The Mahatmas worship me with love, and that love is love for the highest. And wherever there is true love, there is divinity. Wherever there is that divine manifestation, there is true love. That kind of worship is performed by those who are Mahatmas or high-souled ones. Others worship knowledge through knowledge. Of course, the Theosophists did have some activity in the United States in those days, so some people had been introduced to some of these ideas through them. Here, Sri Krishna is describing different methods by which the eternal truth can be worshipped and glorified, remaining steadfast in vows. Through love, one can attain to the same goal as through knowledge, because in the truest sense, love and knowledge are one and the same. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa has said it again and again. In this country, especially among Christians, knowledge is never considered to be one of the paths, and love or devotion is the only path as described in Christianity. But knowledge is the path through which scientists and philosophers go, and they attain to the highest truth through rational understanding, intelligence, and knowledge. But of course, Christians also have a lot of Bible study and that type of thing. You could consider that an aspect of Jnana Yoga, even though it's still focused on the bhakti aspect, but it's still study in that sense. Sri Krishna says, others, again worshiping me through the sacrifice of wisdom, realize my many-sided wisdom in unity and diversity. Why sacrifice of wisdom? Wisdom or knowledge itself is a great sacrifice. That knowledge is not ordinary knowledge, but knowledge of the Supreme, the eternal truth. That knowledge takes in every other thing. The Spirit is not unknown and unknowable, as described by Herbert Spencer and Kant, but it is unknown and unknowable by the intellect. It is knowable by our spirit. It is the source of our consciousness. Intellect cannot know this. Sense perceptions cannot reveal the eternal truth. Intelligence and mind are transitory phenomenon and relative, but our true nature can know the eternal truth. The knower alone can know the eternal truth. The Atman can be known only by self-consciousness and not by any other means. So again, just having a book knowledge of the nature of Brahman and Atman doesn't do it. You have to realize it within your soul. And you could say there's an emotional component to this. Your emotional body is really a motivating part of you. If your mind convinces you that a particular course of action is the best action, but your emotions don't want you to go there, you probably will take that course of action. You have to be emotionally invested in something in order to go after it. So your emotions are really part of this. And so it's going to be, there's going to be, in some sense, a reaction in the emotional body when realization comes. It's going to be blissful, joyful, ecstatic. Those are more emotional concepts than intellectual concepts. You can't just intellectualize, oh yeah, I think I feel joyous. Well, you either do or you don't. So we all know about the ether, well, except that they kind of did away with it, but ether alone would not explain anything because ether is not the source of consciousness. Ether is revealed by cosmic consciousness. Otherwise, no one would know the existence of ether. So what is higher than the spirit is revealed by that which reveals. What reveals is higher than the object of consciousness. Therefore, we must know that if we say either is the goal, that would not explain everything, because behind the goal is the knower of ether. The knower of eternal energy is the goal, and that is the Supreme Spirit. Who will protect the universe? The laws only protect this universe. Laws are nothing but the medium by which the divine will is working in the universe. God protects the universe through the laws. He does not protect it by holding the rod in his hand, saying, if you do not obey me, I will kill you and send you to eternal fire. His laws are uniform and eternal, and nothing can go beyond these laws. Take, for example, the law of gravitation. If that law were not in manifestation, then the whole universe would have gone back to its primordial condition, that is, to the state of ether. These laws protect the universe, and you should understand the meaning of the word law when they are interpreted by the gross minds. You may call the divine will, still it protects just the same. Why is he the Lord of the universe? Because there is nothing higher than he. So Sri Krishna says, O Arjuna, I am the prime goal and the preserver or sustainer of all beings. I am the master and receptacle of all of them, as well as the witness of their good and bad results. I am the savior and real friend of all. I am the creator and also destroyer. I am the cause of both origin and destruction, and I am the immortal seed, or source of everything. I give heat to all the universe in the form of the sun, and I convert rain into clouds and clouds into rain. I am the immortal or immortal life of the devas, as well as death of the mortal ones. I am everything in the universe, gross and subtle. In truth, all things of the world, sentient and insentient, owe existence, intelligence, and life from me. So there again, that's a passage where he's clearly identifying himself with the ultimate reality, or Brahman. He's a manifestation, an incarnation, and everything comes from Brahman. But since Brahman is the infinite, undivided, and unchanging, we have to divvy it up into three aspects of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And since Krishna has more of the preserving qualities, we say he's an incarnation of Vishnu. But he's clearly identifying himself with that ultimate source here. And it's a little difficult to interpret his passages about the ether, since the ancient idea of the ether was not the scientific idea of the ether was that it was the medium through which light waves traveled, and then they discovered there was no such thing. So what he's referring to is a little difficult to understand, but probably some sort of primordial energy would probably be a better way of saying it. And so things that are lower, you can't understand the higher, basically. It's only your infinite spirit that can understand the infinite spirit of Brahman. So I think that's what he's trying to say.
Is he maybe trying to say heaven in some sense? Everyone thinks people rise and go to heaven, and that's...
I don't know. I didn't get that feeling, but I'd have to reread it.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't get that idea, but if that sounds right to you, it might be okay. All right. Well, I guess that's our time is up. Didn't quite finish this, but anyway. All right. So anyway, the source Atman is the source of everything because Atman and Brahman are one. So tying everything up in a nutshell, Sri Krishnaism is an incarnation of the ultimate reality, and so he is identified with the ultimate reality. But how do you concentrate on the ultimate, infinite, undivided, unchanging? There's nothing to grab onto. So that's why incarnations are helpful. They give us a human form that we can relate to and understand, and so we can see the divine through them. And we can do that with Ramakrishna. We can do it with a deity like Shiva or Durga or Kali. So we have, as he explained in the beginning, we have lots of choices in Hinduism. And most of us, and most Hindus, I think, there are some that are very exclusive to their particular path. But when it's Shivaratri, they're all going to a Shiva temple. And when it's Durga Puja, they go to a Durga temple. And so even though their primary family deity or their chosen ideal might be Ganesha or Hanuman or some other aspect, they're still going to worship the other aspects, especially on the special days for those aspects, because there's that basic understanding that all of them are just different manifestations of the divine. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Om, peace, peace, peace.
Swami, phenomenal class tonight. Oh my goodness.
Oh,